All right, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and open the meeting. It's 10:34. Roll call. Harry, Peter, Marina,
Here.
Supervisor Sabatier. I'm going by, sorry about that, Supervisor Sabatier. I'm going by the the actual, yeah, sorry about that. And then I'm here. And is there someone else that we need to?
We also have Director Scott DeLeon as well. And then Celia Hoberg from the county, and then Daniela also.
Okay. Okay. And so with that, we have a quorum. Is there any items that are not appearing on the agenda that we'd like to consider?
I have a few.
Okay.
A few.
Yay! So we got an email from committee member Peter Windrum of a few items that we would like to present, see if we can get on the agenda for today. So one of those is the Army Corps of Engineer project plan. Also is the Middle Creek project manager, a letter that committee members Harry Lyons and Peter Windrum had wrote. And then also a report on our DWR grant expenditures to date. And I will let Peter Windrum elaborate a little bit more if you would like to, but those are three items that we do not have on the current agenda that were requested to be put on today.
So Army Corps, Middle Creek Restoration Project Manager, and then you said a letter?
The DWR grant expenditures to date.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Do we need to vote on all three at the same time, or should we? Go ahead and explain.
If I may just add one thing too, at the last meeting, we talked about us doing a report on a discussion about a project manager. And so that's what we have put together and I submitted, and we'll go with, like to have that added for a discussion item, no decision on that discussion item. The other is about water storage, and this project is an added feature. I'll be brief about that, but it's pretty significant in these times of shortage, and I'd like to discuss that very briefly too. So those are the two items that I wanted to add for informational purposes to the discussion today.
Okay. Did you have anything? You're good with the Supervisor Sabatier? All right. Can I get a motion to accept all three items?
I make a motion to accept all three items on today's agenda.
Second.
And second by Supervisor Sabatier. Okay, all in favor? I guess we'll call the roll call. Harry?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Marina?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Is there anyone else I have to ask for a vote? I think that's everybody, right?
Was the second by Bruno? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that's everyone. Okay, so that's and I'm an aye, so passes unanimously. Okay, so shall we go right into those, or should we appropriate those down further towards the bottom of the agenda where we talk about let's see, non-timed items? Is that okay with you, Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
Anytime.
Excellent.
Anytime. Yes.
Okay, so we'll cover those after public expression. We'll put those on number 11 and we'll go into them there. All right. Next on the agenda is board action, and there's minutes from February 1st and March 1st that we need to approve. Has everybody been able to review the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any changes or adjustments that need to be made? And is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on the minutes or anything of that nature? Not hearing any, I'll bring it back. If there's any, can we pass them both on one motion, or? Yeah, okay. So if we can get entertain a motion for
Quick question. Is this Cherish who is doing our notes, our meetings? Okay, just wanted to say thank you for her doing so. It's something that no one ever wants to do in any committee that I'm ever on, and it's just, I appreciate whoever does the minutes for us. And so with that, I move to approve the February and March meeting minutes of 2021.
And I second that.
Motion by Supervisor Sabatier, second by Harry Lyons. Okay, so I'll call for the roll call. Supervisor Sabatier,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Marina,
I,
and then I am a yes. So there you go. Motion passes unanimously for the minutes for February and March of this year. Thank you very much. And so we'll move forward to project area parcel acquisition. 4.1 update on project area parcel acquisition. That's you, Marina, I think.
yeah, so I'm gonna let Celia Holberg, our county right-of-way agent, elaborate a little bit more on our progress to date. Celia has been doing an awesome job in having conversations with Monument Right-of-Way and Paragon Partners, our two different contractors on board aiding in our parcel acquisition to date. So I will let Celia, if you are online, go ahead and take over.
Oh, boy, I'm here.
Thank you, Celia.
So as far as acquisition updates, we got approvals from Water Resources on some appraisals. So the Montanos parcel, the Clear Lake Duck Club parcel appraisals were approved. So Paragon, let's see if I get the right company. Paragon is moving forward with getting the offers ready for presentation to those property owners. The Sino-American Buddhist Association, I have not heard yet from Water Resources. I thought that appraisal had been approved, but I'm going to verify that today so that we can get Paragon. I'm trying to combine both consultants, get them to go ahead and move forward on that offer as well. On the preliminary title reports and things of that nature, I pulled all of the files from Fidelity National Title and canceled them out. I was having a lot of problems with the title department, with the higher ups at the title department, trying to get title reports we ordered in December that still were not made available to us now. So went ahead and moved them all to First American Title Insurance. They are working on getting all the orders opened for us right now. So we'll get updated preliminary reports. There are 4 property owners in the acquisition area that were going to cost us upwards of $40,000 for title searching. So we opted not to pull title reports on those. It's the Edmonds Reclamation District, Department of Transportation / Caltrans, the Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District, and the Reclamation District. I've been doing research on those 4 property owners and the parcels that we want to acquire and found some interesting documentation through a lawsuit and through a resolution from County of Lake Water Resources, where we got rid of those parcels because we didn't want to maintain the lower area of the Middle Creek Flood District. So I was talking with Jeremy at Monument, and he suggested a shared use agreement, which we're looking into so that we may possibly save several steps and money. Instead of acquiring those parcels back, we would work with those agencies and have a shared use agreement to go forward with this project. So I'm in the infancy stages of research, and I think that the more research I do, the more I'll find that they're probably going to work with us with no trouble, since they have those parcels for this project to begin with. So that's where I am with the acquisitions on that part. Just a lot of research right now, a lot of title searching so that we can save that $40,000 for acquisitions instead of title work. So if you've got any questions, that's probably a better way to go. Let me know.
Go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
And so basically what you're saying is you would be seeing if maybe that shared agreement would make it almost like they're part of the district, therefore we're completing our, sorry, I got something waving in front of my face, or part of the district so that it looks like the project is getting progress and moving forward in acquisition, even though we're not actually acquiring it.
Yes, it would be more like a fee, or I'm sorry, more like an easement in a sense. I'm trying to think of some other wording for that, but the plaintiff on the original action for the San Joaquin and Sacramento Drainage District through the reclamation of the state of California Actually, it was a lawsuit back in 1965 that affected the Jones parcels, Seeley's parcel, several of the parcels. And they have been maintaining those properties as they got them through that lawsuit. So I think rather than shifting it back and forth, since they're all part of this project anyway, I don't know enough about the joint use agreement, but I'm working on that right now with the monument consultants. So I'll have a lot more information at the next meeting. But again, it would just be a giant waste of time and money to try and determine ownership, go in, make an offer, and get these parcels when we may actually not need to do that to continue with the project.
And the beauty of it is it could save us a lot of money that could be spent elsewhere, as we've been kind of seeing whether or not we're going to be able to afford every single one of those properties that we're trying to acquire. So that's actually really good news.
Exactly, yeah.
As far as the progress for Monument, I know that we gave them a large list of properties to go after.
Yes.
I know we were waiting for duck season and other things to end so that they can get started. Have they started their appraisals and started submitting stuff to the state? What's their overall status?
They cannot move forward until we have the plats and the legals completed by a licensed surveyor so that we can give the appraisers what it is we're trying to acquire. So we don't have plats and legals, and I'm not aware of us having a surveyor in contract for those plats and legals. So Monument basically, instead of burning up their money, their time, they're waiting for us to get the plats and legals so that we can move forward with the appraisals and then go for the acquisitions.
And I see Scott popped on. I'm thinking he has something to say on that.
Yeah, the cost difference for the surveyor based on the details of the plats and legals, and it was significant based on how the legal descriptions for the plat were written. And so they gave us a couple of options, and we were hoping to get some buy-in from the state on that. And we were never able to get a definitive yes or no, or frankly, any real answer from the state on that. And Kevin, of course, as you know, has moved on. I'm not convinced that the folks at the state, I don't think we should even continue to pursue that. And so I'm going to be bringing I'm going to make an assumption on what we can do with the plats and legals, and have that to the board here in the next couple of weeks. But and I don't want to get into the details of the type of legal description. But the cost difference was significant for each individual parcel that we were going to have to do. So we're just going to make a decision and go with that, and hopefully the state isn't going to get into the weeds too bad with those legal descriptions on the partial acquisitions.
Okay.
Is it? Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
Oh,
Yeah.
This matter of plats and legals is a precondition to the state doing approving an appraisal, or
the appraisal can't be done until the area we wish to acquire on the partial acquisitions has been platted out on a map.
Sure.
And legal description written up.
Okay, on partials, that makes sense. Now
we have quite a few partial acquisitions.
Sure, they're around on the perimeter of the project. Right. Next question is, have inquiries been made of those owners, nonetheless, of a willingness to sell either that part that we're seeking?
The letters for willing sellers went out again, and they're slowly trickling back in, so we don't have them all in yet.
Do we have any in?
We have some, yes.
And what's the follow-up then with those folks?
Well, some of those are partial acquisitions, so there's nothing more we can do until we have the plats and legals to get the appraisals to make those offers. On the full acquisitions, I'll have to double back and check that. But on the full acquisitions, if any of those willing sellers said yes, then we can move forward with that.
we don't know at this point, or at least ways for today's meeting, how many of those folks have responded and moving forward.
I've only received a few from the gals in the front as they come in. I don't know that I have them all, but I will circle back and verify that.
Okay, does now, do Monument and Paragon have, do those letters come back to you or
To Water Resources, yes.
Water Resources?
Yes.
They're CC'd to Paragon and Monument, I suppose.
I know we haven't given any of those letters to them yet. I was waiting for them to come in a greater amount so that I could give them groupings of acquisitions, but I can certainly get the willing sellers off to each respective consultant.
I can get that for you, Celia. It's actually at my desk.
Okay, sounds good.
I think I've been playing a theme that action in this case should be sequential, not concurrent. In other words, we can't wait for those things ought to be coming in and moved ahead, and Paragon and Monument move on them immediately, not wait till they get a group of them. We're up against a deadline. The part that I'm terrified about is that we don't spend that full $15 million. It would just be, I think, because how do you go back to Cecilia Aguiar and say, we need more money? Oh, by the way, thanks a lot for the 15 million, but we didn't spend it. We didn't get the job done. That's one of the features that I think is just poses a terrible risk for us. I just, any little thing where you can move ahead, please,
Absolutely.
let's do it, and don't let anything hang us up. Even on the, on the partials, talking to the people there about their willingness to sell.
The only problem, well, once we get the willingness to sell on the partials, that absolutely, but we have to be careful when we're trying to talk to them about offers if we don't have appraisals in hand, because it puts us in a really bad position not having facts in front of us. So absolutely, I understand on the willing sellers that we've received. Anything that's a full acquisition, I will move it forward to the consultants, but on the partials, it's just,
Sure.
You have to be real careful how you talk to the landowners, because they've got some ideas already of what they think they want.
Sure. And I guess I'll make one last thing. When we're looking at making the case for funding to get up to from the Corps and Congress, we cannot be in a situation where we have to have every single parcel acquired. That would we'd be stuck out there forever. So in my way of thinking, it's the critical parcels, the crucial parcels that would send those example of the Buddhists and Montanos. Those are absolutely crucial parcels. Once you get the great bulk of the parcels in the middle part of the section, if the project, then we can argue. I mean, in other words, we can really make our case. So that's why I think that's such priority to those total parcels. Acquisitions, you bet, they're on the edge, but they're going to take much longer no matter what.
Right.
So those are my comments.
And Paragon is moving forward with the offers on the Clear Lake Duck Club, Montanos, and Saba as well. We did get the approval on the Saba appraisal, so she's working on those offers right now.
Okay. And to persuade those who might be reluctant, just remind them that at the point at which the levees break uncontrollably, their place goes underwater.
Yeah.
And it will be permanently underwater, and it isn't going to be worth a whole lot.
Exactly.
So a
Except
little persuasion of that sort, I think, is really entirely appropriate.
Except I don't think
Keep people
2021's
motivated
rainfall is
forward.
very persuasive for that argument yet.
Yeah.
Maybe next year, but yes, I agree.
And then I would just like to also add that the Ortega parcel, that purchase agreement will be going before the board on April 20th. And then Torrance and Vigil, we are going to follow up. I know Laura from Paragon is following up with them this morning, but it was noted that they would be completely vacated out of their former parcel this weekend. So we're going to follow up with them to make sure that the last stages of their relocation were smooth sailing. But as we're on this call, we're getting emails, all sorts of emails from Paragon as we speak. So yes, Torrance Vigil should have been out this past weekend.
Go ahead, Bruno.
I'd also like to, just a real quick point, to Peter's point. The last time the levee nearly failed, the lake was not at flood stage. In fact, I don't even believe it was at full. And it was the penetration there at the pump station that failed, the penetration through the levee. So we don't have to have a flood for us to potentially be in trouble with those levees. And we have the Hanston property, and Marina and I have been talking about that. And Mr. Hanston, I believe, is kind of dragging his feet. And we are preparing our budget right now. They're due on Friday, and what I've asked Marina to consider is developing a cost and start putting some money away for an eminent domain procedure for that piece of property. So we're going to be developing some costs and putting some stuff in our budget for that potential action.
That's good. Good.
So out of all the properties that Monument is looking at, how many of those are partial? And it doesn't have to be an exact number, but is it 2/3? Is it 1/3? Is it half?
It's 50% or a little better than that.
Okay.
But right about 50%, 52%. So
Okay.
there's quite a few that are partials.
And utilizing that information, what is Monument doing with the other 48%? If it's the entire property, can't they be moving forward and making progress on those properties, or is that still being held back because of the other partial acquisitions or something else?
I am not sure of that answer.
Because I would love to see those things coming to us with some progress. And I understand if there's some technicalities to certain properties, such as partial acquisition, that it would take some extra steps to get us moving forward. But I would hope that we can see some changes and some progress, because I don't understand. I agree with Peter. This is not everything must be finished within step 1 before we can get to step 2. No, each property might be following a different timeline and a different pathway. And if I'm not seeing any changes to the entirety of the project, where I'm not seeing that progress, I'm feeling like Monument is kind of holding back for no reason other than waiting for us on something that they don't necessarily need to wait for us, especially if it's about 48% of the properties can move forward.
I'm pretty sure Monument is waiting for the return of the willing seller letters. That was another thing that I remember in a conversation with Monument, that they wanted to be sure that they were going to do, these appraisals and do this work for willing sellers, because that's what the grant stipulates. So again, I'll have to get with Cherish and or Marina to find out exactly how many of the willing seller letters have come back. I've only received copies of like 4 of them. So I don't know of any other willing sellers at this time.
Okay.
Can I follow with a question?
There was about 4 owners, just so you know.
So we're not getting a lot of response then.
Well, and the ones that, to Peter's point, the ones that we've received that have indicated that they'd be willing to talk to us, let's get those to Monument today. Yep. And okay. Perhaps we need to send a second letter to those who haven't responded and indicate that, look, we're very serious here. We need to hear from you, and let's put a little more pressure on the ones that we haven't heard back from.
Can I ask one further question? In the cases in which the property owner is unwilling to sell a part of the property, but will sell the whole of the property, do we have to go through that survey process and legal description when that isn't going to be how it works until sometime later down the line? I know you all bought that vineyard property up there. I think, was that an Oldham?
Well, then we get talking about uneconomic remnants of properties that, and that would be a Scott and Marina call. How many partials do we want to own after the project's complete? And then what are we going to do with all that inventory?
Well, can I come in?
I'm just throwing that out. It's a thought, I'm just throwing that out there.
But I think that's a landowner decision, isn't it? They
No,
can say, yeah, I'm willing, provided you buy everything, not just, I'm not willing if you're wanting to buy just a partial.
well, Scott,
Well, yeah, so that's a case by case basis, and I don't know if I mean, to my knowledge, we haven't heard a property owner say that yet. But it's it's a parcel by parcel. Absolutely, they have they can come back and say, you know what, I don't want to just sell a little bit. I want the whole thing. And the one that comes to mind is and the name is escaping me, unfortunately, but we have a property that, all the homes are elevated. They're way out, well above the project limits.
Yeah.
And we're trying to buy a small portion of the property that is down in the 100-year floodplain. But the homes that are on the property are well above that. And I'm not sure we want to, I don't think we want to do that.
No, but what I'm thinking about is the vineyard property up toward Upper Lake on the highway where the district still owns a whole bunch of the vineyard that's not within the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
And they weren't willing to cut it off, and you wound up buying the whole works.
Well, and I'm not, I'm not sure that they weren't willing. I'm not sure of that. I think that, my recollection was we were working under the assumption that we had to buy all of the property in fee, and that a partial acquisition wasn't on the table. And as a result, we bought that entire, I think it was Oldham or Robinson, one of those vineyards. And you're absolutely right. We bought a whole lot of property that we really didn't need to. And frankly, we weren't set up to maintain, and it's created a lot of problems for us, which is one of the reasons why we're trying to pursue this partial acquisition, just because there's a lot of properties that only a small portion of which is in the project boundary, and I don't want to buy the whole thing. We have a whole bunch of relocation as well. If we were to try to purchase the entire property, the relocation issue it rears its ugly head, because there are a lot of properties that have these structures on them, and we don't want to get into that either.
no, because relocation would set us back. We just wouldn't make the goal.
I guess that I understand entirely. We don't want to do that, but I can visualize situations right now where there would be some property owners that say, I'm not going to sell you a part. You buy it all.
Right.
So then the question procedurally is, is there then an appraisal of the totality of the property?
Yes,
And and that has to be approved by DWR. You
correct.
certainly don't have to do a survey of the partial, because that can come after the fact when you're selling off the excess. And so and by the way, it's that vineyard property, for example, right. I know there's one fellow that's already inquired about, can he lease it? So, and I think there's a very good chance there's a property owner next door that would love to buy it, that whole part. So if we can do that, then we can bring that money back into the kitty for the purpose of our further acquisitions. I'm just trying to get procedurally straightened out, so that if it's a case where, as I say, you have a property owner who says, I'll only sell it if we buy everything, can we bypass those steps, expedite the process, get the appraisal, and so forth?
Yeah. And there's no reason why we can't do that. And again, it's going to be a case by case basis.
Right.
And I have not seen anyone come back and say, I won't sell a partial. I want to sell the whole thing. But we'll deal with that when we see them.
We do want that with regard to that one very important island out there. I mean, that would not be an unhappy consequence if the property owner were to say, we'll sell everything.
Are you speaking of the Bloody Island piece of property?
Mm-hmm.
Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I would like to
what I'm thinking, if I may, is if that situation appears where somebody does say, I don't want to sell partial, then let's bring it back. But at this point, we don't have any evidence that somebody is saying that or not saying that. And so we can discuss this fully and never have to deal with it, or we can deal with it when it comes.
Sure.
I think it's important to know that it has the possibility to show up. And that I think as soon as it does, let's make sure to have that conversation, because I have some ideas of how we can try to make it work so that we still don't have to pay for the entirety of it.
Okay, and I see there's a question by Corolla. Has there been discussion with both Robinson and Upper Lake buying the part of the property the county does not want to manage? I asked which property, and then Daniela had stated the vineyard. I don't know if we discussed that. I don't even know if that's part of, I guess it would fit the discussion.
And I think it would come up again once we come back from what does that property owner say?
Mhm.
And if they're going to allow us to do partial acquisition, then that doesn't matter to talk to someone else. That's still their property. They can talk to Robinson or Upper Lake since it's still their property. If they want us to buy the whole thing, then maybe we can go into discussions with Robinson or Upper Lake to see if they can help us with a sharing of the cost. I don't know. But those things will come up if they come up.
Yes, thank you, Bruno. That was my suggestion, was that maybe if it comes down to the county having to purchase a whole property because they're not willing to parcel it off, and the concern of losing money because you have to pay for the whole property, maybe it's property that the tribes are looking at and would want to take on, and enhance their.
That's my plan B that I had not quite detailed.
Plan Bs are good to discuss with everybody so we can all kind of like mix and match too.
Yep, just didn't want to elaborate too far when it's not an issue we're dealing with quite yet. But yeah, we need to think of plan B for sure.
All right. Any other questions on this topics of discussion on this?
If we can kind of reiterate what was said, if we can put out a second letter to try and get our property owners to respond, maybe put in there final notice, second notice, I don't know, something in red that makes it seem important for them to respond. I'm not quite sure how we can get them to respond, but I think that's important. And then anything that we receive that's obviously not a partial, if we can make sure to forward that. I just want to make sure that we're providing consensus from the committee so that it's well noted and taken.
Go ahead, Marina.
Thank you. I would also like to elaborate on that. I want to make sure that Celia and I also have the opportunity to follow up via phone call as well. I think a second letter will do us great. It doesn't hurt to have that, just make a few edits and do, second notice. But I think a conversation before or while we're sending out the second letter does not hurt because, just seeing two letters back to back, I want to make sure that we form these conversations. And I know that I've gotten a few calls from the parcel owners, inquiring, well, is this actually going to happen? What are you trying to offer us? What's the price that we're looking at? Am I going to have a lakefront property, et cetera? So I think having wrinkle out some of these conversations via phone and then following with letter, I would also like to add that to that request from the committee as well.
And I think that in a specific amount of time that you think is adequate enough time for them to respond, if they have not responded, I think this is where you use the connections of this group, where we can do a personal invite for the conversation between Department of Water Resources here locally and the property owner. Because some people, they may not think that it's a piece of mail they need to check, that they need to respond to. But if we make that personal phone call between Harry, Peter, and Eddie, not necessarily me, but they know a lot of people in those areas and they can help provide that fire that's needed to get that response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's going off of what Mary Jo just added into the chat. She said that I assume the time sensitive nature of the funding is in the letter, which we did outline the funding, but we didn't put the sensitive nature. So I think that once we do that follow-up letter, we can be more specific on, this is why we're pushing this along, because often, a lot of these parcel owners, they've been aware of this project for, how many years now. I feel like at this point, it's just a repetitive things that we need.
Is this for real?
Yeah. Is this actually happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree.
Okay, and so just to recap, Supervisor Sabatier said is conducting the second letter, including another updated notice or however you want to word that. And then you're pretty much just looking at follow up, right, Supervisor Sabatier, what we're going to do with this discussion. And so that's one of them.
Marina, I will start working on that second letter today for you.
Thanks, Cherish.
Peter, did you have something? I seen your hand up. All right. I think I know we didn't like in essence open it up to public, but I know that they've got some words in, but I'll do it one more time just in case. Any public comment from anybody joining the meeting from that's not on the ad hoc committee. Okay. Hearing nothing, bring it back. Is there any other topics of discussion on 4.1? If not, we'll move on to 5.1, update on DWR grant agreement extension request.
Yeah, so I've been having conversations. The official letter is going out today. As Director Scott DeLeon mentioned, we have a new grant manager that the committee was aware about. So just getting them up to speed has been a longer process than anticipated. They are not only relatively new to the project, they're relatively new to the grant. So they've had to do a lot of fact checking with the higher ups on the DWR team. So again, those letters are going out today. And again, I'm asking for at least a 2-year grant extension. I don't think that's going to be possible from very brief conversations with our new grant manager, Nancy Snodgrass. She didn't give me a definite. Again, that's why I'm waiting to see what we get back in writing. Because again, she's like, I'm not quite sure this is what I can gauge, but it seems that we're going to have a lot less. If we were to be able to be granted a grant extension, we'd be lucky if we could get 5 months. That's what it seems like. But again, I do not want to confirm that until I get definite word back from the state. This grant extension we've been working on this for a few months now with our former grant manager, Kevin Pond. He gave us sample letters. He outlined the path that we needed to take, and then he departed before this extension was moving forward, and now just getting the new grant managers on task. We're hearing 2 different sides from what Kevin Pond had shared with us and now what our new grant manager. So we're diligently working on that. But in the meantime, we're going to try. I'm going to, reach for the stars. Hopefully we land on the moon. I think that's how the saying goes. So in the meantime, and this ties with the request that Peter had asked, was what have we spent so far to date with our grant. So we have March 31st, 2022 that we need to utilize these funds for. And one thing that I am also working on is if we can't get a long extension, seeing if there's a way that we can do some sort of amendment with our current grant, and that would be between the county and the Department of Water Resources, to see if we can move some of those funds that were outlined in previous tasks to more funds in our actual parcel acquisition. So looking at our current grant, not only possible amendment, but also a request for extension. So.
Does it have to be spent, or can there be letters of intent signed with the property owners as we go through because we know the process takes a lot longer than the actual saying yes.
Right.
I'm just kind of curious if we can maybe put that into a certain legal category where it checks that box off for them, and then it can give us a little bit more time to play with it. Kind of like I'm thinking the CARES Act funding. Even though we said we were going to spend the money by December 31st, they're allowing us to at least have something on paper that it's being spent, but it doesn't have to necessarily be spent. I don't know. There's always some legal ways to make those things happen.
That's a really good question. And from my understanding, it has to be, so we have until December to request funds. So I'm not quite sure. I have a feeling though that it has to be spent from my understanding, and I can try and pull up the
I agree with you, Marina, just because of the procedure of the acquisition, they won't even let us put in a request for the check to close the escrow for the acquisition until their steps have been taken in a very specific manner, and the funding is
Right.
the last thing. So we can certainly try though.
Sorry, the contract has a specific date by which the money must be spent, and it's December 31st of next year. And I dare say that if it's not, it goes back into their kitty and there are other projects sitting there drooling, hoping that they can get that money that we don't manage to spend. And so once again, as everybody knows, the pressure is on us at an incredible degree. So it's the contracts have to be in place 6 months prior to that, essentially the request for money, and there's a deadline by which it must be spent.
Yeah, and looking at the email from Nancy Snodgrass, our new grant manager, it seems that the grant money is completely run dry in June 2023. So there is
Sunset
only,
clause, yeah.
yeah, so there's only a few months possible for an extension.
Yeah.
Even so.
Yes.
And I can share, I have the Excel document. If now would be a good time to share our expenditures to date for the grant. Is
Yeah.
the committee okay with that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Are you guys okay with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you need to, yeah, you got it. There you go.
Can you guys see it okay? So we can see how this is outlined. This is based off of our agreement. So this is this Excel document is one that our accountant had created. So you can see the personnel right here, funds allocated for personnel, DBW, or it's not DBW, it's DWR allocated. And this is what we have remaining. And that's just how much it costs, you know, when we do our progress reporting, when we do our admin, anything of that in terms of grant management. So supplies here is outlined under supplies. So under here we have acquisition costs, relocation costs, hazmat cleanup, demolition, and well expense. So here is what was allocated. Here is what we currently have. We also have personnel and professional / consultant. Under here we have the appraisal services, hydraulic mitigation, real estate agent. Here is what we were allocated. Here is what we currently have left. And then other miscellaneous items, the 10% contingency, property maintenance trust fund, Lake County's cashier, etc. So here's the grant total, and here is what we currently have left. And just keep in mind, we are in the process of our appraisals and acquisitions. So that does suck up, as we can see, a good chunk of funds. And now with our Saba parcel that we are in the process of acquisition, and our Montanos and Ortega as well.
I would hope, and I'm sure they're saying to the, what I hope they're saying to the property owners, if we're going to sell it, it has to be done within a very limited period of time. We want to buy it. We're only going to have so much money, and that this transaction has to occur, otherwise it's gone.
And nobody's going to want to buy it from them after it floods. So
And that'll be the kicker.
take advantage of that window of opportunity, because if we lose our money and we can't continue with this, they also get a piece of property that is going to become absolutely worthless. Right now it has value, and we're willing to pay that value. I think that's really
Key emphasis.
the emphasis we need to make is we're trying to help you right now in order to help us with the lake. But if the lake and nature takes its course naturally, everything loses, including them. So I will say that I'm concerned about this overall conversation. The number of properties left, the number of amount of time left, the potential for an extension diminishing, or at least if there is an extension, it's a very limited one. I almost feel like we have to somewhat reverse calendar this and really make that be some goals that we set for Monument to be able to move this forward, because at the pace that we're going, it seems like we're almost, Monument at least, is at the same place as they were last month. I know we're trying to move things forward, For instance, I would hope that within the next 2 months, we can do what we need to do to make sure that we get all responses from property owners so that everything else can move forward. In the meantime, different properties can move forward and so on and so forth. But right now it's so kind of open-ended with the end goal rather than milestones, that I'm very concerned that we're going to end up with a very hodgepodge properties and not a complete project. I don't know. The concern is mounting.
Yeah. Are there any other comments on this? Anyone from the public would like to elaborate on this? Okay. Bring it back to the board. And so Supervisor Sabatier, is there anything action that we should hold with this from what you were saying?
I don't know. I don't want to add a whole lot more on top of what staff is already working on, but I see time slipping.
Mhm.
And I don't know if what I just said would help, but I just, I was happy that we obtained monument, but yet at the same time, we've had monument now for 2 or 3 months, and I feel like there just hasn't been a huge progress as much as I would like for it to have been done. And I get it that it's a bureaucratic process of hurdles that we have to jump through continuously as we deal with the DWR process at the state level.
It's really not Monument's fault that we are where we are. I need to say that they're waiting for direction from us.
Okay.
So I don't want you to think that Monument's not doing anything. They're waiting for us to get some specific things done. And, you know, I will tell them today to go forward with the complete acquisitions. They can go ahead and get those. I'm trying to remember now if there was an item they were waiting for before they started appraising the full acquisitions or not. But I just really needed to be on the record. This is not on Monument.
And I appreciate you clarifying that. And I don't think that it's just that we've been in a contract with them and they have been unable to move forward. And
Correct.
That doesn't help us to reach our goals. And it's because of the bureaucratic process that we need to finalize that is guided by us, by the state's guidelines of what we need to do before we can get to next steps. And so it was a happy situation to get a new contract and take on all the rest of the properties versus just the 8 that we were looking at before. But yet here, 2 months later, we're looking at the same status and same situation, even though there is some movement internally that's happening to eventually get it into their hands. And I don't know how we can expedite that process, but I'm looking for, and I know that we've discussed some of those ways by pushing some of those things rather than waiting. If we receive even one that says, okay, let's go, let's move it to them.
Mhm.
So I think
I will call Jeremy at Monument and let him know of this conversation. I don't want to overstep because Marina's the project manager. I'm not, but I will have that conversation with him and ask him, what does he need to do to move forward on the full acquisitions and what can we do to get those moving now? So I will ask the question.
Can I offer one other thought too? Because of the time restrictions, I would suggest that for those where we only need part of the property, the partial acquisition, we offer them at the outset to buy everything. Because although it's excess property and we'll have to go through the sale of that, there are 2 considerations. One is speeding it up because we don't have to wait for surveys for doing anything of that sort. Second thing is that if we buy it and then sell the excess, we should be able to keep that money.
That's correct, but we're talking about an awful lot of excess. And again, the county is responsible for the inventorying, the maintenance, and then to advertise and sell those parcels. And then I would have to defer that to Scott because that creates a whole nother section of, I guess you could say, right-of-way compliance that we're talking about staffing that. So I understand completely what you're saying, Peter.
I'm more worried about the idea that we don't spend all that money because it reflects so badly on us. How do we go? The consensus seems to be this is not enough money to buy all of the properties. That's probably true. But how do we go back to the legislature and to Cecilia and say, we need more money? By the way, we had 3.5 years to do this and we didn't do our part. And so therefore, if I were Cecilia, I'd say, you guys are incompetent. Why should I be going after more money for you? I mean, it's that serious. So I'd rather spend the money, buy those extra properties, expedite it, and say, by the way, we're going to go through selling these excess and use that money. I just think it's that critical.
I also think that, with looking at this, we're using these funds for the acquisition under one grant, and we've seen all the hurdles that we've had to jump through. We've had 3 years and it's taken this long, and of course COVID has had an impact. And I think that we also need to think of, the bigger picture of, okay, we have to follow all these rules and outlines and requirements from the state to acquire under this grant. But bigger picture, we have all these parcels that we need to acquire. We have all this stuff that needs to get done. And if we have to go through the bureaucracy, which of course we're using state funds to do this purchase, we also need to look at the bigger picture and how can we move this along most effectively. We all know that grants are not a sustainable means of, getting things done because you have rules, regulations, requirements that you have to meet. So bigger picture, what are some other ways that we can think outside the box? And I know that we've talked about trying to get more funding, but this is just one grant. So for example, if we were to apply for a different grant, say a federal grant to get this project done, what are the rules, requirements that we're gonna have to follow to use those funds? Because every grant is different, every way of doing it. So, as Director Scott DeLeon mentioned, him and I've had conversations on how do we do eminent domain, because there are gonna be parcels that we continue to hit with this current, that we need, that we're not gonna be able to purchase through our current grant. So
willing sellers, right?
That doesn't do us any good. We still have the root of the problem that we have more parcels to get done. We have more work that needs to get done, and all the funds that we have currently are not going to be enough. So even if, my goal is to use all these funds, and we're still far away from doing that. As we've all mentioned, each acquisition is case by case. So,
well, and maybe we need to make a decision that we're just going to go back to not to the drawing board, but we're going to make these all complete, full acquisitions. Don't take just what we need, buy all of them, spend every dime of the 15 million, because it'll probably take that to do it. But then we could give Monument the direction that these are going to be all complete acquisitions. We're not going to screw around with the partials, get the appraisals done. Let's get the offers out there. I mean, there's that plan of attack. But again, I don't want to go against what I was advised as far as why do we want land that we aren't going to need, and then we're going to just have to inventory and maintain.
Isn't that the situation with the Robinson property or whatever it is that they're asking about because it's not maintained right now? That the county owns?
Oh, I don't know about that parcel.
Oh, you're talking about that vineyard property.
Right.
Actually, that's pretty, well, first of all, the fellow sent me a copy of it because I've been dealing with him on the Middle Creek, on the Hitch thing, but he wants to lease that property, the part that would belong to the county, and do some farming on it. Well, that's pretty cheap. I do think Habemetal may well be interested in that piece of property. And so they could be approached about that idea. So I think if someone were put in charge of liquidating these excess portions, that it could be done. Scott and I had a conversation at one point. There was one where there's a house or two, Scott, and there'd be leftover little pieces that if were consolidated into a single parcel could be really valuable. That's right there on Highway 20. So that's somebody else's separate assignment, but I certainly, Cecilia, I would endorse the course of action you've just talked about.
I just need the okay to do it.
How does everyone else feel about that?
I guess Scott's the fellow.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the duty would fall on the Department of Public Works for the maintenance of the properties that we have, the remainder. Some of them are uneconomic remnants, some of them are not. But just from what I've learned in the last 4 years, and I know Caltrans is different than Department of Water Resources, but when it comes to the maintaining of an inventory for a government agency, it's not just a part-time job. It's quite a few hours of compliance and forms and things of that nature. So I think that was why we were trying to shy away from acquiring properties that we didn't need, and we were going for partials because we were thinking it was going to be more expedient and more money saving. So, but again, we either make a decision and just go for broke and get them all and then deal with that after. I don't know.
Scott, I see you put your camera back on.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the frustration. There's a time frame. We're running up against it. The state is not. It's taking. With the change in the project manager. I had a discussion with Marina here just in the last couple of days where. It took us a month to get an answer from them over something. So, if you want to go to Cecilia Aguilar Curry and complain about something, it's the time that it takes to get stuff through their departments. That's contributing to this. The process of declaring property surplus and then splitting it off and selling it. Yes, it can be done, but it's a pretty arduous task, and there's a lot of moving parts there. And we're talking about something down the road here. I get that, and to date, the decision to try to purchase these partial acquisitions to in effect accomplish what we would eventually end up with by buying the whole thing and then separating off the part that we don't need and then selling that. The thought was it would be it would be less effort and less cost to try to do the partial acquisitions now. We can revisit that. We'll take a look at the parcels that are remaining that we need to acquire. If it does make sense to purchase the whole thing. Again, there's a lot that goes into that decision. If you have homes on that piece of property, now that just opens up a whole nother set of complications that we need to deal with. If it's just bare land, perhaps that is something that we could consider. But if it's got a home on it, I really don't think we want to go down that route. I think we need to really go after the partials. What we will do here is we'll regroup with Celia and Marina and I, and we'll take a look at the parcels that are remaining. We'll get Jeremy on the phone and find out, when we're going after these full acquisitions, there should be no reason that they're waiting on us. Right. And so we'll make sure that he is aware that he needs to get on that. And we'll just take a look at where we're at with these parcels and formulate the path moving forward. To include, if there's, and I mentioned it earlier, to include start putting some funding away for eminent domain. Unfortunately, that's probably going to happen. So we need to we're going to need to start developing a strategy for that, and which we're going to start with one of the parcels that has a renter and a occupied residence in it, and we need to get those folks out of there.
Thank you, Scott.
Supervisor Sabatier?
So I'm looking at, I was going through our website here, and unfortunately, there's still some stuff up from 2015, so it's not quite up to date, but found the plan with the 105 total parcels where it says 16 of them are partial property acquisitions. Now it seems we're saying it's half of what's left, which is, I'm guessing, around 30-ish properties. And so how did we get from 16 to 30-ish? Was the 16 a much larger partial acquisition, while now we're up to 30, where we're asking to take much, basically, we're trying to chip off 5% or 10% and purchase that and leave the 80% or 90% where the owner can still have their property, where before we were buying the whole thing instead. How did that number change, and how can we maybe reduce that number? Again, I'm just kind of curious as to where those numbers came from.
I think the numbers went up as far as partials because we were looking at the 100-year floodplain line, and we didn't want to go above it and acquire property above that line. And so after doing a pretty thorough look at the GIS and looking at the 100-year floodplain, we didn't want to purchase above that line because it wasn't necessary.
Right.
So that's why we got so many partial acquisitions out of that.
Okay.
I think if that helps.
I think it's difficult, and I appreciate the answer. I think it's a difficult situation, mainly as Scott alluded to. It's the timeline that crunches this whole situation. I know that it took us a while to reinitiate the Middle Creek Restoration acquisition. And that now with COVID-19 adding on even more potential delays and hurdles, it's just, I don't know what to say. I keep my fingers crossed, and I know everybody's trying their best. It's just unfortunate that our process that we have to deal with is just so long and arduous. It's not a simple one.
All right, let me see where we're at here, sorry. So I think we're still on item 5. Anything else on this item of the agenda?
I'll be contacting Monument today on that.
Thank you, Celia.
Sure.
And definitely thank you to Marina for trying to get DWR at the state to give us an extension. I'm sure those phone calls are not satisfying to make when the response is, doesn't look like it.
They are the highlights of my day. Let's just say that. So
You like the sound of
Nothing can
crickets.
yeah, nothing can put a damper on my spirit. But thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone on board. And, again, as Director Scott DeLeon, we understand the frustration and it's difficult, but my mindset is we're going to keep chugging along, trying the best that we can, and definitely investing our energy in where, we're moving this project towards further into completion. And that's all we can do. So.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to item 6, Army Corps. And I know that we had a talk with them. It was a couple weeks back, Peter, myself, and Harry. And Harry turned off his microphone, so I'll let Harry lead the way.
Yeah, this is, Windjam and Crandall and Lyons met with our project manager, Dylan Van Dyne, and the budget analyst, Chelsea Egan. And we had a lot of questions for them, and they gave us information that just prompted more questions on our part. They sent a letter to the Department of Water Resources last April saying that the Sacramento District of the Army Corps of Engineers has been working to complete the environmental and cultural resource efforts associated with completing the coordination and execution of the project. Then when we met with them in person, they said, no, that was a typo, or that was a misstatement. Now I have graded 1,500,000 typos in my career as a professor, and I don't see that as a possible typo. So we got over that, and essentially they haven't been moving forward on the cultural and biological work that needs to be done for the record of decision. They're held up because that money has to come from the work plan. And they've got a rejection on the money requests for the work plan in 2020, but they've got another request in for 2021. The long and short of this is that Peter has framed another series of questions for them for us to be able to influence the decision, the internal, not on the public, but an internal process within the Army Corps that determines the money for the work plan. So what we want to do is we want to get our congressmen to have some influence on this process so that we can get this biological and cultural work moving forward to get to the record of decision. Once we have the record of decision, we have a right to talk to our senators to get the appropriation moving forward. So there are a series of questions and answers moving back and forth between our committee and the folks at the Army Corps of Engineers. Fortunately, it's not a deadline. It's not the devastating deadline that we faced on the land purchases. There's time on this mainly because they move so slowly, but there's no time limit on the efforts of the Army Corps. They have $98 billion backlog. It would take them 25 years to do the backlog of projects that have been approved by Congress, but not appropriated. So we're in this huge list and queue of people who want things done for natural resources in the country. So we just keep sending them questions. We get clarified on this arcane system of approval and progress. But the meeting was cordial. They seem to be fans of the project, but it's just a matter of getting some money to get to the ROD. And getting to the ROD, I don't want to spend too much time, involves updating the National Environmental Policy Act, a supplemental environmental impact statement, and just satisfying the State Historical Preservation Office, the National Historical Bureaucracy, and also tribal consultation. So there's some local work that has to be done with tribal consultation. So we know what needs to be done. We have a list of that, and we're asking questions about how to get the money. Peter, can you help me out? Anything you need to add?
I would, a ditto is my response. That's exactly right. And so our focus is, and it's apropos of another little thing that we'll discuss very briefly, because I see we're running short on time, but it's, we need to up our horsepower at the federal level and identify those pressure points. That's what we're working on. Identify the pressure points, meaning who are the decision makers at every stage that we can put the pressure on in order to get that, because it's not very much money. This is not the big design. This was the money just to do the job that's present right now. And then they make this record of decision. And with that in hand, we can get the money from Congress. So
probably under 100 grand to get to the ROD.
Yeah.
And it would be something like 30 from the non-federal sponsor. So
yeah,
until we get there, then more money is irrelevant. They don't want money till they get their own money. This is what's frustrating. We actually asked them, Eddie and the other two of us asked, what if we gave you some money? And said, well, it wouldn't really matter until we get the federal share of money. So frustrating, but again, no pressure time limit.
So go ahead, Bruno.
So you were saying the biological, archaeological, are you, is it a NEPA process that we have to follow since it's going to be a federal? Okay. Do we have to do CEQA simultaneously? Because I know that NEPA does not meet CEQA and CEQA does not meet NEPA. They unfortunately don't communicate well together.
Unless there's some surprising update for CEQA, we are done with CEQA. We were done with CEQA in 2005, 2004. So there might be an update that's required, but CEQA has been historically
Okay.
satisfied.
Okay, yeah, it might need an update because I believe there is a statute of limitations for your SQL analysis. Can we start that without having acquired all properties? We just need
Oh, yeah.
like right of entries or things like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. And what they're saying, there needs to be an update in the NEPA program. And furthermore, that they pay for that. It's not a cost share because they did the original environmental assessment way back when. And for 750,000 or something like that, was a huge amount of money. But the indications are now that's on their bailiwick and we're not having to pay part of that. So, but again, they've got to get the money in hand, and it's not the big design money. This is not really huge
Right.
amounts of money. It's what they call work plan money, which sounds like something of a, as we try to understand this, it's like something like a slush fund that they allocate to various projects to work on. So that's our understanding, my understanding, at least at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Dylan also mentioned that we asked like what progress has been made, and he said since last year there hasn't been any since we had the meeting with him. That makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
So Harry, would it help with these questions? Let's get these questions formed and then get them to Garamandi's office. Is that what you're thinking?
No, these are questions for Dylan and for
For
Chelsea.
Dylan?
And,
Okay.
yeah, and I have to translate them from Peter. Peter is more of an interrogator, and I need to kind of smooth out those questions so it's not like we're giving this guy the third degree. If I have to, it has to sound like some academician asking questions that interest him, so we're working on.
Yeah,
I just heard-
I like cross-examination. It's a lot more fun.
But there has been progress made in this respect. They have put their project into a report to Congress on water resource development, and connected with that, they have made 2 separate requests for this money. So that to me is progress. They have been requesting money. So.
Right. We just don't know yet who made the decision to not give us the money, to give them the money. That's what we're trying to identify so we can haul that person up before the
tribunal,
the Inquisition.
Well, Celia, thank you. I see your note. Thank you for being, she just stepped out. She said if we needed her for anything else, she had to step out. So anyhow, so what do we do from here? What would you recommend, Harry?
I'm gonna send those questions, and then when we get answers, I'll report back to you. And if we get, what is it, the person we want to reach is the decision maker, right, Peter? Well, if we get that, then we can get Garamendi and other people to pressure them, and including the Board of Supervisors too. So we just need some names,
Someone higher than Dylan is what you're saying? Someone that can,
someone different, someone who's in the money business. Dylan's not in the money business.
Got
it. So we get the names, then we have somewhere to go.
Right. Is there any other questions on this? Bruno, do you have something that you were?
No, just more bureaucracy.
Is there anything that the county, is there anything that the Army Corps would need from the county as you're having these conversations?
No, not until we know who it is. But the county, when June comes, I'll rephrase another letter of intention. So every year I do that, and have that signed, and the county will express its interest in keeping going officially.
Perfect. So I need. Thank you.
And I appreciate the question, Marina, because I think we can do something. It might not be requested of us, but I think it will look good if we do something. But I will hold until item number 9 to mention what I think we should be doing.
All right. With that, is there anything else on this agenda item that we need to cover? Or can we move on to the next item, which is PG&E? And so, is there any updates on PG&E that anybody has? I don't think
No,
there is.
no updates at this moment in time.
Okay. So anyone from the public? Okay. Legislative number 8.1. Any updates?
I will add to that one for the conversation about whatever we can squeeze out of DWR to help with the extension. We do have McGuire in our back pocket who wants to be a part of this project, and any kind of pressure he can put on DWR to at least give us 5 months, 6 months, whatever we can get. I just want to make sure that we don't forget that card that we've been holding on to.
Good.
So then would it be, going off of that, would it be too early just to ask for that extension as we are in the process of requiring that extension, having these conversations with McGuire, any other legislative entity to get these letters going in support?
I'd say the sooner we open those discussions, the more they'll understand what our needs are, and we can get maybe even ideas of what we should be doing rather than waiting till the last moment. So yes.
So you're saying reach out to McGuire sooner
And
than later?
maybe if we wrote a letter signed by the Board of Supervisors, not just signed by this committee, and then CC those letters directly to Aguirre, Curry, and McGuire's office, as well as to DWR. That way they're well aware, and that can open up that conversation of what can you do to help us make this letter have an impact and help us with this situation. I don't know. I need you and Scott to tell us if we're stepping on toes by doing that rather than continuing the internal conversation. Because there's some departments that, similarly to if you're working with somebody out in the public and all of a sudden the public gets a hold of us that there's, help me with this project, it may not bode well where I thought we were making progress. Why did you have to get the supervisors involved? That could be a similar situation at the state level. So I need you guys to let us know what your thoughts are and what you think the best strategy is.
Well, I'm all about getting things done, and I'm all about having those conversations documented, as you stated. Instead of just having these conversations internally, we need to get letters going. I'm in full support of having any letters of support from any, entity as possible, and I'll let Director Scott DeLeon state if he agrees or disagrees. But I don't think letters of support from the Board of Supervisors, any tribes, our friends at the legislative letter would hurt. If we have these letters of support that we're writing on behalf of the county, it just shows the momentum and this community support that we have trying to move this program forward. And if anything, it's just a letter that, the DWR gets on their desk. Oh, okay, so now they have one, from the Middle Creek Committee. Oh, here's one from the Board of Supervisors. It's just more in their face. Hey, we are trying, we are diligently doing what we can, but we are having these roadblocks and we need to get things done. And we have the support and the momentum behind it. And that's where we're at. So I'm in favor of any letters of support as possible. I'm more than happy to draft letters of support depending on, whatever entity and working with those, getting those going. So that's where I stand with that.
Scott?
You don't think I'm gonna get in the way of that, do you?
All right, I think we know where we're at with that. And
But I think I think an important part, and then I'm going to perhaps give a little tidbit of info to Marina here on what I think should be included in that letter. It's not like we haven't been doing anything.
Right.
We have completed appraisals on Montanos and the Buddhists and some of these large acquisitions. We are making progress, but these things are taking a long time, and we have to go through this process. If we weren't doing anything, I could completely understand the hesitancy of the state to give us an extension, but we are doing things. And because of the nature of the type of work we're doing, the nature of their staff working from home, and it's inefficient, I think to include the things that we have accomplished and the time that it's taking, I think those are all a great reason why they should consider giving us an extension. So we'll draft something, we'll get it to your board. perhaps we can also reach out to some of our partners here and see if we can put a package together, and we can put some pressure and perhaps get some pressure put on DWR from the state folks.
Can I comment for, it's my impression that this money comes from bond money, and that there's an absolute deadline by which somehow that bonding funding source, it occurs, just as a matter of law. And it might take, I don't know what it takes to solve that problem, but I think that we're at the very, my understanding going back to Will Evans is that what we're getting has been kind of what was left in the bottom of the barrel, and that there's something more than just an ordinary grant funding process. So it may be some legislative work, I don't know, on the basis of the corona. So I don't know. Knowing more about that might be helpful when, Marina, when you're talking about, in other words, could they extend it? Maybe they simply can't beyond that June date that you referenced.
I don't like to take no for an answer.
I know. No, I'm not suggesting we do, but we might have to go another pathway.
And I don't want to belabor a point that's very obvious to all of us, but we try taking care of the hardest issues first. And so it was the properties with people living there. And right now our market, the way it's working, it is absolutely difficult. The difficulties of finding a replacement property it is something that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for what COVID has created for us. So whether it's pushed us to work in a different environment, it's also made it more difficult to be able to complete some of these transactions because of the situation we're dealing with. So there's so many moving parts to all of this, and we've been attempting again to do the most difficult ones because people have been living there versus just barren land, and so. Anyways.
And so I see that Corolla has stated that she will bring this back to her leadership, Robinson leadership, and discuss support on the effort so that you have more letters of support or to go to the department. So anything else from the board here? Or anything else from public? All right. So
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Marina.
So with those draft letters of support that I have, who should I be sending those to? Should I send those to the chair and the vice chair of the committee? For example, if you are gonna reach out to our legislative folk?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cecilia. And you would you like us, because I heard Bruno mention that doing a board letter, right? So if you let us know, we can bring one to the agenda as well to do one.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Item number 9, project funding. Bruno, I think you wanted to say something on this.
Yeah, I think that our conversations can really be leveraged if we say we have funding allocated for this, we're waiting. I think that says a whole lot more than we are where we are. And right now we don't have anything allocated other than the money that we receive from DWR at the state level to be able to acquire properties. I think if we state that we're in a position that's ready to move forward, then I think we have a better position to speak of why they need to move forward. And we can't say we will make that happen if you make, no, we've already made this happen. You need to make the rest happen at the federal level. And so I'm looking at, and this is not very specific, but I'm looking at our cannabis taxes, the way it was split off, and we put 15% allocated to planning, code enforcement, and water resources. Now, I'm going to guess that we spent about $300,000 of that, or at least allocated $300,000 of that. And that means that out of the $1.3 million, there's still about $1 million left. And maybe it can't be done all in one fell swoop, but maybe this year we need to write a letter from this committee requesting, and of course, I'd love to hear from Marina and Scott because they might have other plans that I might be stepping on here. requesting $400,000 of that allocated to the Middle Creek Restoration Design plan. And then the following year, since we'll get more cannabis taxes, another $400,000 being allocated so that by the end of 2022, or even actually at the end of 2021, after harvest season, we will have that capability to say, we have $800,000 ready for the design. Where are you guys? We're ready to pay for this. We're doing our district part to be prepared for the next steps. And I just think that it may not fix the situation we're in, but I think it lets them know that we're very serious about moving forward. It's already allocated. Let me show you the budget line that it's in. It's there. And right now we can't do that. And I don't think that it's stopped anything. I don't think it's slowed down anything, but if they ever ask and we're not ready, it's not going to look very good when we're asking them to be ready. And so it's just a suggestion that there is some money right now that has not been allocated or requested, unless again, Scott and Marina can tell me otherwise. But that's what I think we should look at doing to ensure that we are ready when we need to go prime time.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Oh, I see Scott. Go ahead, Scott, take it away.
Well, we've certainly, you know, for this year's budget, we've made a recommendation or a request for funding, but I don't think our request, I don't think our request is going to impact what you would like to do there. I think there might. I don't think we're asking for enough that it's gonna create problems.
And I would also just I'd like to add that if we did do that, I think that'd be a really good, you know, good thing to address in one of our, you know, in our letters of supports, if we are requesting extension or future funding, outlining that, yes, you know, we've hit these obstacles and we are diligently working, but demonstrating that we are planning for the futures. You know, here's our tentative game, you know, we are planning on allocating X amount of money from cannabis funds for long-term planning of this project. So even if these funds do run dry, even if we don't get acquisition, we're going to keep moving along. And here's what we're doing in the meantime. So I think that'd be a really good tidbit to add in our letters of support and request.
So what I would like to do, and I'm about to change what I offer just a little bit. We need $800,000 for the Army Corps, and we need $200,000 for PG&E to do all of the design work for both. Caltrans, I don't think we have a specified amount for the design, even though that eventually needs to be dealt with as well. What if we look at writing a letter, a request proposal to the Board of Supervisors for 2 years allocation of $500,000 to cover both of those things. So we can get those things started if it's possible to get those things going.
Yeah, I like that.
I guess I should have said that my request was much larger and that it was going to create problems, because you notice how the thing just jumped. It just went from 400 to 500. Just
Was I supposed to go down?
well, yeah. Again, you know, and I don't have the specific ask sitting here on my desk in front of me, but I know we've asked for some funds to help with the cannabis program, and you know, we'll work it out. But I think this is you know, for all the reasons you've already stated, I think it sends a great message, and it sets aside some funds for future work, and you know, it's consistent with what the board, the board's goals for some of that cannabis tax spending. So, you know, I think it's consistent with everything that you want to do there.
And I will add also real quick that there is another category called workforce retention and development, as well as economic development. And I think that we can figure out how those line items can fulfill your other needs in different capacities. And so I think there's a lot of fluidity within that cannabis tax So let's not,
Right.
let's not take away anything. I think we can make it all work. Whatever's on your Christmas list.
I was just going to say that.
Whatever is on your Christmas list, but
I was just going to say that because also for another item that we could use if we don't want to go above the 400, which I think Scott was okay with initially, but they have a line item for supervisors, something like that. I know that I can request from, that would be very important to the district for if we're looking at projects for supervisors. That way we don't have to cut too far into yours as well.
right.
Yeah. So there's ways to move around it.
Can
Go ahead, Peter.
One of the added items on the agenda that I wanted to put forth might be germane to this discussion, and I can do it very briefly, but it has to do with the overall project manager position because, and I explained that. So I don't know if you want to sort of take that out of order. I think that's down as a non-time item.
Yeah, yeah. If we're finishing up with this, I think we're pretty close to being finished with this. I think we can move right into that.
Real quick, how do you want to go about with that request? Do you guys, the staff, want to make that request itself? Do we as a committee need to write a letter from the committee requesting those things? What's the right process to go about asking for such an allocation?
Are you talking about the allocation
from the cannabis taxes, a request for the board to approve the allocation from cannabis taxes?
Do you think it would be inappropriate for this subcommittee to make that request, or
I don't think so. In fact, I would almost assume that the best way to do it is for us to do a presentation to show where we are, to show what the needs are, and then this is why we're asking you for this money with this allocation for this number of years to be able to fulfill what our requirements are as the district of this project.
I would concur with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that too. Then we put it all in front of them and then help get what we need.
And if we can organize that, if that's a consensus approved by the committee, I'll let Marina and Scott tell me when the best time is for that to happen. Obviously, I want you guys to be a part of that conversation, not just us here. Well, you are members of the committee, but not just the rest of the committee members. And so once we figure out what that timeline is, it seems that we can get consensus from this committee to just move forward and develop that.
So with budgets due Friday and admin will have some time to digest all of that and I don't know what their time frame is to bring those initial budget information to you. I know that our Form 1s aren't due until first week in May or something of that nature. So it's going to be in May, I would presume, end of May, that they would be bringing or at least having discussions about a preliminary budget. I think any time is you can get this in front of the board and start those discussions and start those preparations.
Okay.
We'll figure out
because the request, as we've discussed already, the request kind of impacts some of the other requests that are part of next year's budget. So I think the sooner that some decisions are made for that there's going to be a kind of a trickle down here that are going to affect other decisions that admin and or the board are going to make on next year's budget.
So realistically, let me take a look. And I'm looking at Peter and Harry, since EJ and I are already on the board. I'd love for you guys to present with DWR on because you guys brought us the original presentation in the first place that created this committee. You guys have great knowledge of it. Obviously, DWR does as well. What do you guys think about the 27th or 20th of April?
Checking my calendar. Sounds.
And just to not make Scott sweat, I'll drop it down to 400,000 again. He said yes so easily. I figured I should have tried harder.
Yeah. Either of those days would work for me. Either one.
Because I think we should show off the new mapping that has been done. I think we should show, again, a recognition of the transfer from Paragon to Monument. What exactly is happening? Where are we with property acquisition? Where are we with the request for extension? Especially if we're going to ask for the board. Maybe that's the same time frame that we asked the board to sign the letter as well. Here's the presentation. We're looking for an extension. Here's why. I think that would work all together and be done in a timely fashion so that we're still not waiting for us to go through those steps.
And I think that's why Peter wants to bring up too the
Yeah.
position for I think
do.
it was go ahead, Peter. What was it to the manager?
Okay.
Yeah.
What I would like to do is make the case, if I will, for a project manager. Do a step back for the overall thing, and to make the case that funds would do well to be used for a project manager. What I did is maybe, Marina, could you maybe do one page at a time and we could see it a little over here, start over on this page. All right, yeah, thank you. I just did this little memo to you folks, but I did a step back looking at the enormity of this project, and it is huge. And we've been doing, and staff and everybody has really been doing a wonderful job focusing on the property acquisition, but that's just one phase of this. I did a count of the various governmental agencies that have a finger in this project to one degree or another, some minor, but some major. So whoops, go back up if you will, Marina, for me. United States, quite literally, everybody here has a hand in this project. The President's Office of Management and Budget, the Senators Dianne Feinstein and Alex Padilla, Congress members Garamendi and Thompson, the congressional committees that have public hearings on projects like this as to for appropriations, the Army Corps, plainly, Forest Service, Natural Resource Conservation Service, State of California, Governor Newsom, because it has to get into his budget at some point, Mike McGuire, Cecilia, DWR, obvious ones. Central Valley Flood Protection Board, this happens to be their project, believe it or not. We never heard of them until recently. State Historical Preservation Office, State Department of Transportation for Caltrans, Blue Ribbon Commission for Clear Lake, County of Lake, Board of Supervisors, DWR, of course you all know, the committee, administrator, Public Works, Public Special Districts, RCD, and our next page, if you will. Project contractors, Paragon, Monument, Utilities, PG&E, Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. A very important piece that maybe I can describe very briefly in just a moment. Tribes, every one of the tribes has an interest in this project. Environmental, recreation, and economic interests, Audubon, Sierra Club, Tuolumne, Chi Council, Middle Creek, our committee, of course, bass fishing and tourist industry, really big, Lake County Farm Bureau. So anyway, with that kind of looking at that number of entities that have to one degree or another an interest in this project, and it's what I'm looking to do is just simply identify interests. I see your comment, Carola, that's correct, but I'm trying to identify interests. And the idea that we need to, every one of these needs to be coordinated somehow and put together in their particular place to make the decision makers support this project ahead of other projects. As Harry mentioned, there are lots of other ones. So I'm suggesting that what we need is an overall project manager that with the big picture, with particular focus on the Washington direction, and participate at the decision makers at that level. And so, and project manager, I'm kind of describing this as an individual, but that may not be the case. It may be, in point of fact, contracting with a firm or agency that does this kind of work, because undoubtedly there are firms that do project management. So anyway, I'm tossing that out. That the duties would be to work with federal, state, and local government officials to get the funding for the design and construction, develop with a personal working relationship with every decision maker whose support is needed to move the project forward. And effective lobbying really does that. Organize stakeholder support to exert political pressure on legislators to complete the project, support DWR in its property acquisitions, and report to the committee and others. I guess I'm suggesting that when we step back and this carries on through not just this phase, which we're focusing on so much, but ultimately through the construction of the project, perhaps. Anyway, but that's kind of what I'm tossing out there, is suggesting, and that perhaps that's what it would be funded from, the money coming from the cannabis tax. So there you have it in a nutshell.
I have a question.
Good.
I know last time we spoke of this, I think that Scott and Marina were going to have a discussion on the usefulness of getting a project manager, whether it was required, whether it would really help with the efficiencies of the project. Because again, it seems to me that some of the inefficiencies of the project are just the checklist criteria, checkbox scenario that we're dealing with the bureaucratic process we have in front of us. Is what I'd love to hear their perspective on. Is now the time for a project manager? Is later the time for a project manager? How effective would this be from their perspective?
Well, I think that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now are perhaps not at the federal level, but Peter raises, there's a concurrent thing that's going on, and while we're working on property acquisition and that, there also needs to be this effort to persuade them to get funding or set aside funding and get the Corps to get to work on the project. And we, as you all are aware, we are focused on the local task and the task with the funding and the thing that we can do, and that is the property acquisition and the management of the consultants that we have, and trying to get that money spent. That other effort is frankly kind of coming from all of you, is coming from the committee, I suppose if you wanted to transfer that to a consultant or somebody that was on board and was getting paid to do that, and was that certainly now, or there could be things they could be working on. So I don't know if there's a time that's better than another, but this certainly could be something to consider. I would probably suggest that it be a consultant and not a member, not an employee.
Right.
Just because of the bureaucracy of adding a position in the department. There's no job description for this. I appreciate, you've laid out some of the duties, but there's no job description here. And so, that just opens up a giant can of worms, and salary and everything else. A consultant that we specified what the scope of services was going to be, is going to be the much better way to accomplish this.
I agree. Yeah. As much as anything, I just wanted to lay this out for us to be thinking about, because I think when we start getting up at those higher levels, it gets very, very difficult to be really effective unless you have someone who is able to work here and in Washington. By the way, anyway, so and not here at the local level. That's not really what we're trying to do, except if there are jobs that can be picked up to lighten the load a little bit on Scott, on your department. But anyhow, I want to lay this out because I think we need to think about that as a level of work. Well, for example, one might be hiring a lobbyist to work in Washington, D.C., who has those connections. Interestingly enough, John Stierna, who's some of you know, very interesting fellow. He and his wife have retired to Hidden Valley. He spent 30 some years with the U.S. Department of Agriculture as one of their top economists and was in Washington all the time. And then 10 years with the American Farmland Trust. And it's not that John is doing that because he's fully retired, but I was talking to him the other day and I said, John, do you have any folks there, somebody that you could recommend who might be able to be our advocate there in Washington that has those kinds of connections? So he's working on that. And so just as the kind of thing that we can start thinking about, because there's no substitute for somebody padding around those halls and going in, having access to places to be able to make the case, because we're competing against so many others that we got to be up there top of the list. So anyhow, it's something, as you say, Scott, we're doing a lot of that work ourselves, and so that's a little angle that I'm working on right now, and maybe something will come of that. But
So is the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the idea to, when we do the presentation, when the committee goes to the board and provides a presentation, outlining where we're at, requesting a letter of support, also requesting on funds, that we go into detail and also request, these funds, that if we were granted these funds through the cannabis taxes, that we would get a project manager, and we would also request that as well.
I very much agree. Scott's, of course, he informed us. I agree, absolutely, a consultant. But let's put it this way. Let's call it a consultant at that at that level for advocating for this project at the federal level, and certainly and at the state level too. But helping to coordinate that. You look at all those agencies and people, and that's a lot of folks to pull together, and so that they can act in creative ways and effective ways.
I would also like to just point out that if we do move forward with this and getting this figured out, that we do have some sort of conversations with these folks that are listed, especially the tribes, to outline the accuracy and also where they stand. So,
of course.
Yeah.
All I'm suggesting is that this is not coordinate. This is someone who's coordinating. It's a coordination function, so that the tribe participation, the environmental group of participation is the most effective when it comes to making the project. For us, getting the big bucks from the federal government. Understanding, for example, what the infrastructure legislation, how that might affect a project like this, that, talking about trillions of dollars knowing that and understanding it, and how we can get money working with the Corps. How does the Corps get money to work on this project?
I would like to offer something. I'd like to offer the creation of a subcommittee of at least 3 individuals to work together to make this presentation. I don't think it can happen in an uncoordinated way, and because there would be 3 of us, I think it needs to be decided on within this committee so that we can go ahead and meet. I would suggest that Eddie being the chair, and then Peter or Harry, and then an individual from DWR, whether that's Scott or Marina. That's what I would like to suggest so that we can coordinate what that presentation will look like, what it will have, and what are the asks coming from this committee.
Unless Director Scott DeLeon has his heart set on helping with this, I'm more than happy to help with the presentation.
He's smiling. He's smiling.
I just like to make the offer. Want to share the wealth of fun.
Well, after thorough and careful consideration, I'll go ahead and concur with Marina's offer or accept her offer, and we'll have Marina act on that committee.
Yeah, good.
And I would like to volunteer Mr. Windrum for this.
Nice.
And this is a long time coming. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, he volunteered me for the Blue Ribbon Committee. It's been a lot of fun, but it's turnabout is fair play. Peter, you have this.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Yeah.
So I think it's pretty much a consensus. Peter, you're okay with that?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, of course.
And Marina, when would you like to meet? Would you like to just find a date and then send it out, or would you like to set it right now?
Let's go ahead. I will send a follow-up email after this to both Supervisor Crandall and Peter, and then with some tentative dates in the next few weeks that we can meet, ideally this week, and then we can get going from there. And I'm more than happy to set up the Zoom and all the fun stuff, logistics.
Sure.
And I believe it goes without saying, but I feel the need to say it. This is not the last conversation we're having has nothing to do with the skill sets or capabilities of the current staff working on this project. It's that there's so much more beyond what you're already touching and doing and dealing with in order to really get this project to grow the legs that it needs to have. It's about getting the support that we need to make sure that we can have the progress that makes us feel satisfied with it. So it definitely is not a lack of appreciation of what is happening currently and the progress that we have already made.
I can't overemphasize my concurrence with that. I mean, at the level at which we're working, you guys are doing an incredible job. It's just so much for Scott and Marina and the other staff folks, Celia, everybody. It's just outstanding. There just is this project's big enough that there's a whole nother level that needs to work as well as you guys do. You know, if we could get that, why, we'll get this project done.
Okay, so I think it's clear. Go ahead, Scott. I think.
Well, I'm just going to say I appreciate the comment, but there's no. I think I can speak for Marina. We're not reading anything into the recommendation. You know, this is a team effort. We need help. We had a consultant, and for the life of me, I cannot remember his name, and was performing a lot of that just as a volunteer for us, and it's killing me that I can't recall his name. But he was able to open doors that we weren't, and understood the processes of Washington, and understood the process of you know, that role, and yeah, it was a skill set that none of us had, and so no, I'm not threatened by that at all, and happy to have the help, and if it results in moving the project forward, we're happy to support that.
Yes, George, speak.
George, yes, thank you very much. Yeah, and he was outstanding, just and just a heck of a guy, and yeah.
Peter and I still pester him. Peter calls him up. He last month.
Yeah,
we still consult with him.
And he won't come back, huh?
Well, he moved maybe. I don't know. Yeah, he was superb at working the Washington scene. He knew it. He knew how to do it. It was marvelous. Made a real difference.
Okay. All right. Is there anything from the public? I know we covered a lot. I know that Corolla had mentioned something, and then I don't see anyone else. So with that, I think we're all on the same page with the project funding, and we kind of encumbered the position into it as well with discussion from Peter. Anything else on this topic that we need to discuss? We'll open it up for public expression, and this is where we'll talk about, I think, Peter, you mentioned Army Corps and EWR expenditures. Not sure if we covered some of that or not, but just wanted to.
That's all. I've said everything I want. Oh, yeah, this little part tiny part I want to do, I think is really fun, but it's important. Can you put up, well, I could do it if you let me screen share very quickly. Can I do that? That was on that agenda. Marina, are you controlling the screen share?
Yeah, you should have access to it though, Peter. If you hover down to your to where you see all of our shiny
Yeah, I know
things,
that.
yeah, you can do the
Let's
screen
see.
share.
Oh gosh, hold on a second. I'm sorry, it may have gone off my screen. Just a minute. It's this. Okay, let me get my screen share. Just a sec. I'm sorry about this to do. Oh gosh. Well, let's let it pass. I'll just say it what it is. This is an important feature I got thinking about on this project. And that is that it adds significant quantity of water to Clear Lake. Rough estimate is about 7,000 acre feet of water. The Clear Lake, when the, God, I wish I could get that up.
Is it the map that you shared with me? Just our.
Yeah, do you have that? The one, the design map? Can you put that up? There, that one.
Okay.
This is the most important map. At 3 feet, this of course is the project. Here's Highway 20, Rodman Slough coming down, and East Lucerne cut off here. These at 3 feet elevation, I'm sorry, it's 0 Rumsey. This blue stuff right here is all water. In other words, so that's how deep this is. This is all water. When the lake is full at 756, that everything that you see around here is underwater, going up above. And the totality of that, the sum of all of that is 1,400 acres underwater with a full lake. I just did a kind of rough calculation. I said, well, if the average depth of that is 5 feet, that's 7,000 acre feet of water. And 7,000 acre feet of water does, I don't know, 20,000 homes or something. It's a lot of water. And that's an added, and Yolo County's interested in it. We're interested in it. It's just one more little added benefit, not little, big benefit to this project. So I just wanted to call that to your attention. It's kind of fun thinking about it, but add to the list of everything else that's important.
If I may clarify, it doesn't add water, it adds the capability of the lake to hold that much water, where before it may have flooded certain areas, but if you needed that amount of acre feet to be able to hold that much more water, now it may not flood certain areas.
Well, the significant thing is, you're right, that's technically right. But if you look at it, it's increasing the water storage capacity, if you want to think of it in those terms, of
Right.
7,000 acre feet of water at a full lake.
So just let me jump in real quick. Water Resources hired a consultant several years ago to do that analysis as part of the application that we've already made to the state for that additional storage. And we'll dig up that report. Those calculations have already been made, and we'll dig that up and share that with the group. But you're absolutely right, Peter. It does change it changes the storage capacity of the lake, and which opens up a whole nother can of worms, but it is a feature of the project for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Thank you for that. And so with that, I think that covers your items, Peter.
Yes, it
And so
does. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Is there, I don't think there's any, so there's no other non-timed items. Next meeting, May 3rd. So, but of course, we're going to have our ad hoc committee meeting between myself, Marina, and Peter, which will prepare for the presentation, which will happen either on the 20th or 27th, right, Supervisor Sabatier?
It's up to you guys, but yes.
Okay. And then after that, we will definitely have our follow-up meeting. All right, I think that covers everything. Is there anything, like Scott, you have something I could say?
Well, I was hoping to get to it, and the person just dropped off. I wasn't sure if we missed who Jeff S. was. Was a box on the meeting here. Did everyone see? I presume everybody saw
Yes,
that.
I saw
there was a
Jeff.
participant. Yeah. I meant to ask who that was, and the person dropped off. So,
Sorry about that.
no,
Now
that's okay.
Now we'll never know.
Well, yeah, I was hoping to capture it in the minutes, but perhaps they'll show up next meeting.
Jeff.
That's all I got.
All right. Okay, there's anything else? There's not anything else. I think we're good to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. And I think we have what we need to move forward. All right.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you.
Thank you
next
for all your
time.
hard work, Marina. Thank you.
you very much.
Have a
You're
wonderful
And
day.
Ellen as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Bye-bye now.